Hey guys, this is my latest review of the Gilmore Girls. So this is going to be episode 13 of the first season. It is called Concert Interruptus, great title, and a lot of people will remember this or think of this as a standout episode of the season because it is the one where the Bangles guest star. Yes, indeed, the first of many big musical guest stars over the show's run, but I guess they're like the first, so that really stands out. And it is of course when Rory and her friends go to a concert in New York to see the Bangles. Her mother Lorelai and Suki also tag along. So the plot originally is that Suki scores them the tickets, and originally it's supposed to be Lorelai, Suki, Rory, and Lane. Of course, Lane really into her music, but there's certain things that develop where Lane can't go because of Mrs. Kim being Mrs. Kim, super conservative, super traditional, and it's like there's like this funny little scene where Rory says to Lane, "Hey, why don't you pretend it's a play sort of thing? Like she's maybe more likely to let you go." And Lane tries that, but then Mrs. Kim wants to know what the play's about, and eventually Lane just comes clean and say, "Hey, it's a concert. I want to go to the concert." And of course, Mrs. Kim doesn't there. Although we don't see that conversation. She tells Rory later over the phone. But so that's Lane out of going to see the Bangles in New York. And what happens is Rory invites Paris, Madeline, and Louise over because they've all been randomly assigned, wink wink, a school project for children, and they're struggling to find like a venue because Paris is like home life is hell. So Rory offers up her house for them to study. So they come over, and it's almost like this fish out of water type thing because there's like all this like mess at Rory's because they've been involved in like a local like community yard sale type thing, and it's later Lorelai's idea. Well, why don't you take our tickets? You go with the girls, and it's sort of Lorelai suggesting that this is a good opportunity for you to bond with them and for you to make friends this year at Chiltern. So it's a really cool thing, um, and that's kind of the plot. And Lorelai does go with Suki, but she's like, "Hey, we'll just score, cheap seats on the night or something like this." But go with your friends. You should have this experience. You should bond with them. So that's like the setup of the plot. And first of all, I'll just say quickly that Bruce Seth Green directs the episode, and he directed a couple of episodes of Buffy in the early season. In the first couple of seasons, I think he directed Ted and the Dark Age, if I'm not mistaken. But couple of early episodes, so I thought it was worth mentioning him. And but this is the episode where Lorelai really kicks ass, where she proves that she is the coolest mum in the world. I guess maybe second to my own mother, of course. You understand, but besides my mum, Lorelai, the world's best mum. And it's this really cool thing that I think is sort of relatable, where a parent will come good and really go the extra mile to to just impress like your friends, and to really make them feel welcome, and kind of try and make it a special sort of experience. So she like buys them pizza and Coke, and Paris is like, "Hey, I can't have any dairy," and she's like, "No problem, pizza's without dairy or without cheese, but one without." It's that sort of thing. It's that sort of cool thing. She even makes them like Pop-Tart type snacks as like an appetizer, so that kind of rules as well. But boy, does Lorelai go above and beyond with the whole. You should take our tickets. You should go with your friends there. You need to bond. It's really a sweet sort of gesture because Rory's like, well, you really wanted to see the Bangles and stuff, um, and as I said, it's this sort of fish out of water type thing with the cows who come over. Sort of like this before they come over. There's this funny line from it's like even Madeline or Louise is because when Rory says, "Why don't we do it at my house?" They're like, "Don't you live far?" She's like, "It's 30 minutes on a bus," and one of them like, "I don't do buses," which is just this kind of sort of gag about them being so kind of snooty, a bit sort of like middle or upper class, but hey, it's a thing Paris drives in the end. But I think what's really cool about this episode and how relatable the story is that I think it's about just a night in your life which turns out completely different to how you would expect. I think it sort of subverts like expectations in that way because obviously if Rory had gone with Lane, of course they would have had a great time because they're best friends, they're both into their music, but it's that sort of unexpected sort of turn where, of course, I guess maybe in a way not surprisingly, Lane can't come, and obviously fate puts Rory together in the same place with Paris, who she's begrudgingly starting to have respect for maybe, and then Madeline and Louise, who she had been like warming to a bit more, and that's what leads to Lorelai suggesting, "Hey, why don't you go to the concert together?" So I think it's that relatable sort of thing of having an unexpected experience of a night turning out not as you would expect, and I think they do play with that throughout the episode. And I think, what was I going to say about that? I think, well, I think because they're talking at one point and they're kind of like driving Paris up the wall because they keep like asking Rory about Dean, how's it going and stuff, and sort of then gossiping a bit about Lorelai, the fact that, hey, she was 16 when she had you, we're 16, oh my god, sort of thing. And there's like these subtle little hints that maybe Paris isn't as terrible as she makes out because she kind of says, well, of course we wouldn't have like children that long, or of course I think she makes some sort of off the cuff remark, and Rory's like, "Oh, thanks," and she's like, "Well, I didn't mean it like that." But and Rory sort of puts it in perspective. But yeah, Madeline and Louise, it's sort of a funny, interesting scene because I think they are really impressed with Rory's mum and starstruck. She's sort of seen as like this cool mum, but at the same time, I think they are being a bit patronising because they use terms like, this is really curious, like making a big deal out of the fact that Lorelai is actually being a really good mum, a really cool mum. But I think what's clever about the way they set this up is like earlier in the episode, Lorelai's just being the typical like dorky kind of Uncle Lorelai. She's doing her best to rock like this bandana and it's just not working, and there's all this stuff to do with like the yard sale and her saying, no, I can't give away all this stuff. So again, it's that sort of flip thing where Rory's trying to be like the mature one and Lorelai more the childish type one. So that's kind of a cool setup where, you know, earlier in the episode she's being really dorky, but then she kind of turns it around and hits a home run. But they do pull twists on that, because earlier in the episode I think it's sort of set up that Madeline and Louise are kind of the open-minded one, or open-minded ones, and in the group, and Paris is more like the bigot. Paris is still being quite sort of snobby and stuff. And I think it sets you down that path where you think, well, they're going to go and they're going to have fun, but Rory is going to bond with Madeline and Louise, not so much with Paris, but that kind of turns around. And obviously for people who watch the show, they sort of know how kind of delightful and unexpected the Rory Paris like friendship becomes. But so they go to the concert, and the sort of twist is that originally it's like Louise and Paris, or sorry, Madeline and Louise, who are like, hey, yeah, this is really cool. But then they start like flirting with like these two older guys a couple of rows behind them, and it's like midway through the concert, they're like, hey Rory, let's go, there's a party locally, these guys, they're really really cute. And there's this kind of running like gag where Paris like, well, they do this all the time, and again that's kind of a relatable touch. But they basically like skip it, and one of them's actually not bad about it. She just says, the party's not far, why don't you come along afterward to Rory? And she says, well, actually we'll be back before the concert's over, which she probably doesn't mean, but at least it's like a gesture. But obviously it's like really uncool for them to bail, because Lorelai and Suki of course have got like the really cheap nosebleed seats, so they're there at the concert, and Lorelai has sort of said, well, meet me outside, go and have fun, but as soon as the concert's over, meet me here. And it's really really cool. But obviously Madeline and Louise have their own plan. Even though they're underage, they go off, they meet these guys, and that's when the whole thing's turned around, because they're kind of then presented as like kind of douchebags, and it's actually Paris who is presented as the sort of, I mean, cool maybe isn't a word with Paris, but she is cool in the scene, and her and Rory do start to bond, and Paris says, hey, I'm really enjoying this concert. And her and Rory do start chatting and opening up to each other. She tells Rory about her crush on Tristan, which, hey, I still don't get, but there you go. He's a character that doesn't really convince me, but they sort of open up and talk about that. And yeah, they do kind of have fun together and sort of start to bond. So that's what I mean about this is the sort of night that people have in your youth, particularly that turns out differently than you expected. Just random events change things, and fate changes things, and stuff like that. But then Lorelai, when they show up, it's like, hey, you're missing two gals. She obviously goes nuts when Roy says, well, they bailed, they went to this party with these guys, and sort of vintage Lorelai, when she then basically, well, doesn't fly off the handle. She's completely justified, but it just shows what a badass she can be as well. It's like, if you push her too far, she's gonna flip. So she basically goes off, and I'm not quite sure where they found where the party was, but I guess the gag is that she just searched everywhere, and they find the apartment and they start knocking on all these doors. And the gag is that, hey, Lorelai's not gonna give up until she finds out where the party is, so she's knocking on all the doors. And again, there's some nice stuff with Paris and Rory in the scene, because Paris is like, I can't imagine my mum would ever care this much to like come searching for me. She might send someone, sort of thing. And Rory's trying to comfort her, saying, "Oh, sure she would." And at one point, there's a little smile from Paris. It's like, this is actually turning into like the greatest night ever, sort of thing. She's like really enjoying Lorelai's mum sticking it to her friends, because eventually she finds the right door, and she tells one of the guards, "Hey, they're actually underage, so you could get into trouble. This isn't cool." And she drags them out and chews them out, and she's like, "Hey, I'm looking forward to having a long conversation with your parents. We're going to talk all night." And they walk off, and it's just this brilliant payoff scene where Lorelai just takes control, and it kind of completes like this killer episode for her, where she was really cool and sweet and charming, but yeah, you cross her, you screw with her or her daughter, yeah, you're gonna pay. And she really takes charge. But it's also this character beat where it shows how much Lorelai just cares. It's like she's looking out for Madeline and Louise. She's kind of saying, "Hey, this isn't cool, and you don't do that to people." But also, she knows that they're underage, and that, yeah, then this isn't cool, and they could get into trouble, or something bad could happen because they don't know these guys. So it's just this really cool character beat showing how much Lorelai cares. And we get a bit of the Bangles as well. They do actually perform, sort of. I think it's maybe a half of each song or something, or they might have played one and then you get half of another. So really cool, like guest star. And I think a lot of the other stuff in the episode is around like the yard sale and various things. I think the big thing that comes out of that storyline is that it's actually the first reference we get to Luke's ex-girlfriend, Rachel, who's a journalist who I think turns up at one point in the later season, but this is news to Lorelai because she never knew Luke had a girlfriend. She can't imagine him with a girlfriend. She's surprised that apparently he was so heartbroken over her. And like Suki and Miss Patty fills him in, fills her in and says, well, it's because bad breakup and he was really heartbroken. But it comes about because Lorelai buys this sweater at the yard sale, and Luke gets really upset over it at the diner, and it's become because it belongs to Rachel. So that comes up, and there's a funny little conversation at the concert with Suki and Lorelai where Lorelai is she's trying to dig for dirt on Rachel, and she's like, well, why would I be jealous of someone who Luke broke up with years ago, who who I'm not even interested in, referring to Luke, that's just crazy. And Suki's like, yeah, it is crazy. So it's kind of great, and Lorelai apologizes to Luke at the end, and they sort of make up. But I think that's the other big plot. But I enjoy the episode. There's a nice little setup. I like some of the stuff when they're studying, but I think it is this theme of a night which kind of turns out how you wouldn't expect it, and it's quite a big episode, I think, for Rory and for Paris, and moving forward in their friendship. So they have it. Enjoyable stuff, as it normally is. That's Gilmore Girls, the 13th episode of the show, Concert Interruptus. So let me know what you think of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And the next episode looks kind of interesting as well, so I'll get to that as soon as I can. Try and keep these coming. But yeah, keep watching Gilmore Girls, keep watching TV, guys, and I will see you later. Goodbye.